What's going on, everybody? Let's talk a little basketball because Bleacher Report, they gave us something to talk about right now. They just released their top 100 players all time, and there are some interesting spots where they decided to play some guys from Phoenix. But honestly, there's a few names on this list that I don't know how they got there, and take everything with a grain of salt right now because they don't even have Kobe in the top 10. They have him on the outside looking in, and they have Steph Curry in the top 10 ahead of him. I don't know who really thinks that's a real thing, because apparently if you do, you don't think defense matters at all. Steph, not really known for defense. Kobe, really good defense. But there are a few guys from Phoenix worth talking about. Starting with Devin Booker not making the top 100. I don't think that's a terrible surprise at this point in his career. I think if he continues on with the trajectory that he's at and continues to put up numbers, it's going to be hard to keep him out of the top 100 all time. But it's going to be a longevity argument at this point in like total points and stats, because the team accomplishments just aren't there yet. It's one finals appearance, no championships, no MVPs. Gonna have to get a little bit more than that. He's gonna have a lot of total points, gonna have a lot of top 10 in scoring in the league. Is he gonna ever have like a lead in the league in scoring? I don't know. Needs a little bit more meat to that resume. He's gonna have all-stars. I don't know if he's gonna get there in all NBAs, but he has the potential of cracking this list by the time it's all said and done for him. Got a lot of work to do between now and then, though, because I think just that if he had more help around him and was able to get more of those team accomplishments, it'd be a lot easier to make the argument for him. As it stands, kind of flimsy. Feels like they kind of got that one right. As tough as it is, that's probably the best Sun player of all time. At least he's a guy that's going to be there for the longest and have most of, if not all of, the franchise all-time records. But there's been better players in individual seasons, and there's a few of them. I mean, Amar Stoudemire didn't make this list, and at the peak of his powers with the Suns, Amar Stoudemire was arguably a better player. So, tough. I think he can crack it, but he's got some work left to do. But as far as guys that did make the list, Steve Nash comes in at number 35. Now, he had such an interesting career. I feel like for a long time, people tried to discredit a lot of what he was doing, and looked at it as, because that was kind of one of the first teams that really embraced speed and tempo. And so because so much of what he was able to do wasn't generated necessarily fully in the half court, not a lot of people gave it like the full respect of how difficult it was and what he was able to accomplish with that team, because so much of it was kind of the run and gun in an era where everyone walked it up and it was about executing in the half court. They kind of broke the mold and kind of a little bit led the way to kind of the way that the NBA is played now today. If Steve Nash played in today's NBA, he would put up insane numbers if he was able to shoot as many threes as everyone else did, because he was a prolific three-point shooter. It just was in an era where people didn't really shoot a ton. He'd be able to do that now. You put him on a team with some young guys that want to get out and run, the score in today's NBA is already up by like 15 points from when he was playing. His numbers would be crazy, and he still managed to get 2 MVPs during his run there. Granted, a lot of people feel like one should have went to Shaq, maybe both should have went to Shaq, but he had crazy years, and his numbers would be incredible if he played in today's NBA. Era is always important to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at these lists. Now, they have him one spot ahead of AI. I always felt like AI was overrated in that he was kind of an icon, and people, because of that, ignored a lot of the faults in his game and just tried to give him either the benefit of the doubt or just let him slide on a lot of stuff, or just ignored it. And there's a few other guys right there that are a lot of more older heads that are right behind AI that he's ahead of as well. Could you make the argument, he's closer to 25? Maybe. But 35 honestly feels about right for Steve Nash. I just also feel like part of it too is the beginning part of his career. It took him a while to kind of get going a little bit, but he was incredible for his era. And if he played in today's era, he's just a little bit out of place. If he played in today's era, I think he's held in a very different conversation because of his ability to kind of create shots and to shoot. And in an era where, to be honest, defense isn't as much of a focal point because not as many people run in the half court. It's kind of, you don't rarely talk about your guy scored if he scored on you in a fast break, which is a lot more of the scoring today. And so the need for half court defenders isn't as prominent as it was when Steve Nash was playing. So some of his defensive deficiencies would be hidden. And all of his offensive gifts would be magnified. And I think his career, even as good as it was back then, I mean, he was an 8-time All-Star, 5-time assist leader, he'd be even better in today's NBA. He is one spot behind James Harden, a former Arizona State star guy that has had a crazy career. This feels really low. This feels like a product of everyone looking at how he has fallen apart in the playoffs. But I have a hard time believing that there are 33 players in the history of the league that are better than James Harden. His year in Houston, his MVP season, was as good of an offensive year as we maybe have ever seen. People want to comp it to this year's SGA season. It's not close. SGA did all of that in the flow of an offense with a great team around him and very rarely in kind of ISO situations where you had to go. Everything that Harden did that year was ISO, I'm going to work. And he was absolutely wrecking the league, averaging over 35, scoring at will, and carrying one of the best offenses in the entire league with they just put shooters around him and said, good luck. And he was at the peak of his powers, and he was incredible. And I understand that maybe this is a career list, and championships do count. Postseason success does matter. And he has fallen really short in that era, that portion. But I look at him much more of a 20 to 25 range player than at 34. He's still really good offensively, but he was incredibly good offensively at that point, as well as the fact that like he's morphed his game and shown the ability to kind of adapt to what's needed. This is also a guy that has led the league in assists twice. A guy that in those situations where he didn't need to be the scorer is able to facilitate and like find guys and still be able to run an offense and be incredibly effective. He's got the same thing a little bit as Nash, where it was like maybe a little bit to be desired defensively. Sometimes it's not amazing, but he's closer to 25 than he is 35. And so I don't think it's outrageous having him at 34, but he needs to be higher than that. He needs to be in that range of about 25, I think, would be a lot more appropriate for him. He's one of the top 5 greatest offensive players in that run that we've ever seen. And basketball, as much as we point towards defense, as much as we point towards basketball is about scoring points and more than the other team. And if you got a guy that could just get you a bucket, pretty important. Pretty important in this game. Number 30 was Chris Paul, an 11-time All-Star, 9-time All-Defense, 5-time assist leader. I got to admit, I've never been a huge Chris Paul guy. He while Harden came up short in the playoffs, I more felt like Chris Paul got exposed in the playoffs. Like, he was still giving you everything you got. It wasn't like he was just disappeared like at times like Harden did. But when it came to mattering in the postseason, he's just not a guy that I ever looked at that I was like, all right, like the last 3 minutes, this is the guy that's going to bring it home. Once teams really buckled in, I feel like he got negated in a lot of ways. He had great years with the Clippers running, you know, that offense with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan and Matt Barnes and JJ Redick and Lob City and everything. I think he is one of the greatest chess players when it comes to basketball we've ever seen. He's an incredible basketball mind, and he absolutely maximized his ability. But this guy is not really vertically athletic. He's not really like an incredible wow you with his shooting ability. His mid-range was awesome, but like three-point shooting was never really crazy for him. I never really looked at him as a guy that was the face of the league, an MVP candidate, a guy that was the best player in the league. A lot of people think he's the top 5 point guard of all time. I don't know if he's that much better than Nash. I think he's better than Nash, but I don't know if he's that much better than Nash. I don't think he's better than James Harden. Him at 30 feels high to me. I think he's closer to 40 than he is 30. Now, he's still top 100. He's still top 50. I think he's great in the overall, the history of the league. I don't know if I look at him, though, as an all-time great. Because I don't really know what he did that was all-time great worthy. He could absolutely run the pick and roll as anyone, as good as anybody maybe ever. And again, he manipulated defenses and ran stuff, but the ball stuck in his hands. I got to tell you this, if you're a Suns man, it's stuck in his hands more than anybody. And there was a lot of times, I think I just probably also have a prejudice against those types of point guards because I hated playing with them. You're just sitting in the corner waiting and waiting and waiting until finally they kind of make their move. And then at that point, you get handed a grenade, which is different, I think, in a lot of ways than Harden, because at least Harden was going downhill and attacking all the time, and then it would create it and go. Chris Paul just feels like navigates at the top of the key and works it and works and works it. And then if you're some of these guys, you're just sitting in the corner, you're just waiting and watching. And I think basketball has always been a rhythm sport and a movement sport and a team sport. And for a guy that led the league in assists, his style of play does not translate for everybody. And that's tough when that's your point guard. And it's tough when he's not a guy that can score and get you buckets on command, and not a guy that can necessarily get you over the top then because of that. He had about as perfect a roster for him as you could possibly have in LA, did pan out, goes to Phoenix, had another very, very good roster built for his game. Didn't work out. There's an obsession with Chris Paul that I don't necessarily fully agree with. He is better defensively than Harden and Nash. So maybe that tips the scale further in his way. He's great at playing passing lanes, and he's got quick hands. And I think you could safely say he's a better competitor, has a more competitive spirit than those two. But again, I think he's closer to 40 than he is 30, somewhere in that 37 range. And I think Steve Nash and Harden, certainly Harden, I think, is better. Steve Nash is comparable, and I'd put him a little ahead of him. Steve Nash has 2 MVPs. I can't. I got something with Katie that it doesn't sit perfectly well with me. Number 25 on the list, our next son, would be Sir Charles Barkley. This is kind of crazy, but I feel like Barkley's had a better broadcasting career than an NBA career, and he is a top 25 NBA player of all time. But he is perhaps the best former athlete moving into the booth that we've ever seen. NBA inside the NBA was sad. The greatest show I've ever seen ever. It's incredible. And he is so good at just talking and saying and how he feels and everything that but on the court, you are talking about a guy that won an MVP, that averaged 22 and 11, 11-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA. The resume is pretty immaculate. Clearly, it's well stated, missing that important piece of a championship, but pretty great. The guys that they have him kind of lumped in that section, Giannis is right there, I guess. Yeah, that's fair. They got Jokic ahead of him, which at this point, Jokic, when it's all said and done, might be a top 10 player. Okay. They got Karl Malone ahead of him. I have another bias against Karl Malone, but I feel like he's a little bit of a longevity points merchant. And when you look at his stats, they look amazing. But if you watched him play, it doesn't quite do it for me. I feel like Barkley was a little bit better. They have they have the Admiral right above him. Same kind of deal. I feel like when you look at his stats, longevity a little bit better. Maybe if Barkley took a little bit better care of himself, maybe that would have been a push over the top. But I love the competitive spirit that Barkley used to play with. That dude would go at people and would go hard, would try and dunk on everybody. He played so much bigger than he actually was. And, his stats were backed up a lot of kind of the justification for him right here. At the end of the day, though, this feels about right. Maybe even a touch high, a touch, 27, 28, somewhere around there. But he is, he's the juice. I mean, he's the goods. And it deserves to be certainly in the top 30. But I feel like this is about the right spot for him. The last guy that we got with some Suns connections really is Kevin Durant, who they have at number 13. A two-time champion, MVP, 11-time All-NBA, 15-time All-Star, 4-time scoring champ, with one of the most peculiar little career arcs of anybody ever. And so I don't really know how you judge him. Everyone discredits his championships as he went to the Warriors, even though he won Finals MVP on both of those runs. And probably should have had another third championship if that last year everyone hadn't gotten hurt and they lose to Toronto. But he almost gets the Thunder over the hump, gets them to the finals, wins an MVP, and then it kind of all falls apart. Does his career end up differently if he stays there and he wins something there? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how people evaluate SGA when it's all said and done. But people say at that point championships matter. He goes and wins too, and they say his championships don't matter because he didn't do it with his own team. Okay, well, then he's still at that point at the peak of his powers, and people are wondering, arguing if he's better than LeBron, and that's prime LeBron at that point. Goes to the Nets, awful, falls apart, team implodes, all kinds of talent, doesn't work out for him. Goes to the Suns, awful. Good individual stats, no longer impacting winning. Puts up good stats himself. Nothing really comes to work out for Phoenix. And now he goes to the Rockets. There was a time when I thought that KD was in the 8 to 10 range, and he has slid. I think the last 5 years have hurt his career because he wasn't at the end of his career, like what happened with Kobe or what happened with Jordan, where it was like his Wizard years where people kind of ignore those seasons because it was so late in their career and it was kind of a what do you expect? It wasn't like that with Durant. He's not super old at when he was with the Nets. Wasn't super old when he was with Phoenix. He's basically, still got maybe 3, 4 years that you'd think of being able to play. But he hasn't delivered in a while. What, 8 years, 9 years since we looked at him as being a top 5 player in this league-ish? Maybe somewhere in there. That's a long part of his career to just be putting up points but not really doing much else. And if this Houston run does not work out, I think he slides even further. And I think in the totality of his career, when people stop and really look at it, boy, he's going to be close to 20. I think he's going to be in that like 17, 18 range, pushing 20. Now, right now, if his career ended today, I don't know if I have him as high as 13 anymore. I think he's in around that, and it's close. I think he's closer to about that 15. Is his career better than Jokic right now? You got one more title. How many MVPs Jokic got? How many? He averaged a triple-double at center. He won a title as the undisputed best player on the team that drafted him that hadn't done a run like that maybe ever. He is an all-time great. He's better than KD. He just is. And I think part of it is he needs to do it for a little bit longer, but he's coming in hot. He's got steam, and KD ain't even running on fumes at this point, it feels like. So, I mean, he's getting walked down. And I sit there and I look at this list and I'm like, I think KD's he's in danger of being around 20 when it's all said and done. And this is a guy that, again, I had probably around 8. Maybe that's too low. I don't know. The last 6 years have really hurt his legacy. Now, if he goes to Houston, puts up the same numbers that he was doing in Phoenix, and they make the Western Conference Finals, they make the actual finals, he wins a chip, he gets an All-NBA, he has a little, resurrection of his career a little bit, then we're having a different conversation. But the way things are trending, all of a sudden I look at this season as this is a big year for him. He's going to have to do something to try and save a little bit of his legacy because it has taken some hits, and deservingly so. Let me know what y'all think. Any of these guys you think are in the right spot? Where would you have KD? I'd honestly interested in that because he, for a time, looked like he was going to be top 10 no matter what. They don't even have Kobe in the top 10 anymore. And I can't have a conversation of someone saying that KD was better than Kobe. I just can't do it. So let me know. I think he's going to be around 20 when it's all said and done at this rate. But if you guys think differently, I'm really interested to hear it.